In this video, we wanted to show the key difference between our chains for tracks and a very common traction device, the studs, and what sets them apart and why the chains for tracks are a better option. So the first example that we want to show of the key difference between the chain and the stud is the installation. How long does it take to install these studs with this 5-foot section of rubber track versus our chains? And so to demonstrate that, we're going to install what the company and what the manufacturer recommends for these studs, which is 3 studs per block, because this is a block track. And so we'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll show the comparison between these and the chains. So for this 5-foot piece of track, it took 6 minutes and 30 seconds to install these studs for what the manufacturer recommends to put 3 in each pad. So now, how long does it take to install chains for tracks on this exact equivalent section of track? So for something like this, we're going to install 3 of them. You'll get 14 of them in a set, so 7 per side. And so just for this 5-foot section, we're going to do 3. And so to install these, you take off the one end, you'll hook it down in. Since this is a block track, you're going to go at an angle and then install the nut and bolt on the opposite end. Just like that. So even while demonstrating how to put these 3 on, it took 2 minutes just to install these 3. And so if I wasn't explaining it, it'd probably be a little bit faster, but shows the point of how long does it take to install these studs versus the chains. The next point, after we just showed the installation, is does it damage your tracks? As we saw with the studs, the close-up, the taking them off and on, it leaves holes in your track. And these tracks are expensive. They're not cheap by any means. And so say you have a brand new machine, brand new track, first winter coming up, you install hundreds of these studs. The manufacturer for this company, actually, they recommend 150 per track. So that's 300 studs that you're installing on your machine. And so now you're causing problems with moisture. One of the big things is when you install these, you're putting these holes in the tracks, right? If you can see those steel cables on both sides, that's what's holding the tracks together. So when you're installing these, creating those holes, creating that moisture, you're ruining the lifespan of your track immensely just because of that, just from these. And after you take them out at the end of the season, which several customers of ours have told us of their experience of studs and why they switched over to chains, is at the end of the season, it's hard for them to get these studs out. After you've been operating hours on these things, they're rounded off, they're getting pounded into there. So it's one thing to take them out, and then also come next season, when you go to reinstall them for the winter, you can't use the same hole. You have to use a different hole, is what the manufacturer of these studs recommends, to keep from these things ripping out. That goes to another issue. These things fall out, they get ripped off. What happens next? Are you gonna run them over with your truck tires or a car tire? Now you're gonna be finding these things in your car tires where you're gonna have to go get it all patched. So those are just all things that you just want to avoid entirely. And so when you take off the chains, the only thing that you will notice, we're just gonna be completely transparent, is you'll see a shadow mark, is what we like to call it, of where the chains were installed. Just because these things are end-to-end tightening, they're pulling onto the track. Once you go to take them off, at most, that's what you'll notice. So while all of these studs are putting hundreds of holes in your tracks, the chains for tracks are doing no damage to your tracks. So another key point of the big difference between the studs and chains is the way to install them. The studs require a special tool that is inserted with the drill, right? And it has the 2 prongs. That's what is able to drill it in and pull it out. So now you're having to have a special tool. You might lose it, whatnot, come the end of the season, you're trying to look for this thing. Versus ours is just a 3/4 inch socket. All it takes for the bolts, install them, take them off, it's a breeze. So the final thing that we want to talk about, which is the most important, the traction, the added benefit of that between the chains and the studs. So after installing hundreds of these studs, you might find that you're a little bit disappointed in the traction. On ice, they will do a little bit of a difference, but if you look at that and you can compare the studs versus the chains, as soon as you have a little bit of packed snow with the studs, they're worthless. It's like you had nothing on there to begin with. Versus the chains, when you install the chains, that has a lot more of a bite. You know, it's faster to install, it doesn't do damage to your tracks, but the most important thing that we're after is the traction. It's a night and day difference. A lot of operators compare our chains, they're operating their machine on dry dirt, is what it feels like, even though they're on ice and they're climbing up slopes. And so that's what you can expect by running our chains for tracks on your track machine. Another huge benefit of why people are switching over to the chains instead of just using the traditional studs is the ease of installing them, but also just as fast to take them off. If you're going to a job site, say, where you're not allowed to have chains or studs or any of that sort of stuff for maybe scratching or whatnot, you can take these off in 10 minutes versus having to take off hundreds of these studs just to reinstall them in a new hole on your track. So for this video, we just wanted to kind of demonstrate just the installation portion, the pros and cons versus that aspect of it. This winter, we want to do a side-by-side comparison in a real life atmosphere and scenario of the traction with the studs versus the chains.